All right. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining me here today. We are super excited to be kicking off a relatively new thing for GMAT Club. We are going to be doing some resume reviews live and on the spot for some prospective MBA candidates. Just to introduce myself really quickly, my name is Maria Wickvila. I'm a 2005 graduate of Harvard Business School, and I'm the founder of Applicant Lab, the online service that replaces the need for expensive traditional admissions consulting with an online DIY platform for a fraction of the price. So that's me, and that's what we're doing today. So I've got 3 different brave souls who have submitted their resumes. I have removed, I think, as much identifying information as possible. And so we are going to refer to them as resumes 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to go through and have a little chat, spending time with each one. If we've got time left over at the end, we will save time for questions. So with that out of the way, resume 1, why don't you give sort of a quick anonymous-ish profile background of yourself?
Sure, sounds good. So my name is Resume One, as you can tell, and I'm based in London. And I have about roughly 9 years of work experience. Spent about last 3 years in the UK. Before that, I was in Poland, and prior to that, I was in Mumbai.
Cool. Resume 2.
Hey, so I'm based in Mexico City. I have around 6.5 years of experience working with startups, mostly on marketing and the commercial side of things. I've been working as a consultant, sort of independent for a while, and I've also worked with some of the largest startups in Latin America. I guess that's about sums it up.
All right, excellent. And resume 3.
Yeah, so I have about 6 years work experience, 2 years with a small engineering firm, and then 4 with a larger one prior. Currently based in Houston, Texas.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you so much, guys. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to share my screen. Pressing the button. Oh, it just said friendly heads up. Chrome has a bug that might crash everything. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But we'll start with resume 1. So let's see. Can you guys, resume 1? Do you see your resume up here?
It's still loading for me.
Oh, okay, great.
I see it now, yeah.
All right, perfect. So here we've got resume 1. So right off the bat, the initial visual impression, I had a pretty good one. Like you had, overall, there was some nice spacing between the bullets, as one of the things I talk about in Applicant Lab is that most admissions readers are middle-aged women like me. And you guys don't know this yet firsthand, but after you hit around age 40, your eyes really do start to go. That's not just a stereotype. And so we need to keep that in mind when we're writing our resumes, to have like some good white space around, and have the eye know exactly where it should be going next, instead of kind of freaking out of like, where should I focus first? That having been said, I'm going to start with something super minor. I would love for, there's a lot of bolding here. Like you've got, it's fine to have a bold for your heading. It's fine to have a bold for, like, say, where you went to college or the name of your employer, but to have like the beginning of every bullet point has bold as well. And so the overall result is that it's a little too much. So sometimes less is actually more. So that would be sort of a minor point that I would make. So let's just quickly walk through. You graduated from college, like you said, about 9 years ago. And then ever since then, you've been with the same company. It's a research company. And so you were you were 3 years in Mumbai, and then they transferred you to Poland. And then they also transferred, you were in Poland for a few months. Oh no, sorry, I apologize, for 2 years. Sorry, I misspoke. You were there for 2 years, and then you transferred to the United Kingdom, where you have been ever since. And presumably you've been sort of moving up the ranks in terms of your responsibilities and things like that. So right off the bat, one of my first questions is, your title is associate manager. Do you have any direct reports, or at any point are you leading teams of others?
Yeah, so it's sort of like I have a profile where 80% of my work is what it says in the first bullet, which is basically leading our work with one of our consumer goods clients. The remaining 20% is where I lead a team of 2 people, which is involved in getting this digital transformation for our company. So that's in terms of the people reporting to me. Yeah.
I see. So 80% of your job is working with basically you're sort of dedicated to this one client. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
So
Okay.
I lead our work with that particular client where I don't have direct reportees, but I obviously, because I'm leading the work, I do manage people who are on the project when we're working with that particular client.
Okay, perfect. So one of the first things I would love to see is some explicit description of that. So you could say something like, working with this client, leading teams, and if it varies from time to time, it could be leading teams of between 2 to 4.
All right.
Marketing and research associate, something like that, to get across that you're not just a solitary person by yourself doing some sort of forecasting and revenue guessing, right? Revenue estimation. Because I didn't really get a sense. I did see here that you were managing a team of 2 associates for this digital transformation project, but I didn't get a sense of like overall, it wasn't clear to me, like, are you just by yourself coming up with projections in Excel, or are you actually working with others? So I would definitely highlight that element of it. One of the overarching challenges that I had was that I had a hard time, because I did not put the name of your research company, but I am familiar with it just randomly. It's a pretty big name, and I don't associate it necessarily with innovation forecasting and digital transformation stuff. I associate it with a couple of other different industries. So I wonder if one of your challenges will also be to kind of provide, and so I sort of put a placeholder here. I strongly advocate putting like some sort of little summary blurb here underneath the name of the company, just to give a sense of like, this is a major company, but the division that I work for, or I have worked for, actually we help large Fortune 100 companies or whatever figure out their innovation budgets or timelines or roadmaps or whatever. Because one of the first confusing things I have is I was like, well, I didn't even know this company did innovation forecasting. And so since I'm not familiar with that, I don't know, like, are you innovation forecasting, like, you're working with this company, and when you say innovation forecasting, you mean they're coming to you and saying, we're thinking of launching a new product, and then you say, here's how much I think you're going to make from it. Is that what that means?
Exactly, yeah. And kind of we go a step beyond that and then help them market that product. But yeah, it's pretty much what you said.
Okay. Is there any way that you can let me know as a reader how much revenue have you helped drive, either as a raw number or as like, 20% above expectations or anything like that, to give me a sense? Because one of my primary concerns with the way this initial wording is you're saying, well, I'm leading some forecasting and revenue management. So I wasn't sure if you were just sort of sitting by yourself in a cubicle, like I said before, just putting together some Excel spreadsheets and sending them out. But it sounds like your job is considerably more interesting than that.
Yeah. Sure. So I can, in fact, what I was doing was in my job description, because there's a separate essay for schools, adding exactly what kind of budget responsibility I have there. But I think maybe it's worth adding it here as well. I can certainly do that. Yeah.
Right. Or you could put something here like, in my role, we work closely with, I don't know I don't know if it would be Fortune 5, in the US it would be Fortune 500, but we'll just say large companies to help them forecast and then market their newest, or is it digital innovations or all types of innovations?
All types of innovations. Yeah.
Okay, so then we'll just keep it at innovations. Right, so then right off the bat, I have a better sense of, when you say innovation forecasting, it helps me understand that a little bit more. And I would love for this to start off with something more like, helped a world top consumer company, launch, analyze and launch a new product that led to, or that is estimated to lead to, X million of dollars per year, things like that. So I would love for you to start your bullets whenever possible with what is either what is that sort of bottom line result for your client? Or if it hasn't happened yet, what is it expected to be? I actually thought it was funny when I was going through that this last bullet point here was actually your strongest one for me, in terms of like, unlocked a 15% revenue growth opportunity by revamping the pricing strategy and optimize. Like, I could immediately picture what was the impact, what you did, you know what I mean? And I was like, oh, that's the one that's last. But as of right now, that's actually so that's so concrete, right? So I would urge you to make things a little bit more concrete. And then similarly, let's actually make this one second, because I think working with external clients is always a little bit more powerful than any internal things that you're leading. And so, sorry.
Just a quick question, Maria, if you don't mind. So the reason I put the digital transformation as a second bullet was because it ties in closely to my long-term career goal.
I see.
So that was the reason I put it as second. But if you suggest I still put this as second, that's totally fine.
Then I almost wonder if it should be, should we actually even put the digital transformation first? So that way, that's like the thing that they notice first. So then that way, when you say in your essays, I've already led a digital transformation at my company, and I want to continue to do it as a digital transformation consultant in the future, or whatever that future goal is, that might help. That might help. That. So let's say you could almost add that up here, like in addition. Because the thing is that it's 80% of your job, you said. So it's also like, oh, which one do we put first? But in addition, I am also leading a major internal something or other.
Task force, yeah. I can do that.
Oh, task force. That's a good task force. Right. So again, that way when I get to the bullets, I already have like the context ready for me. Okay, so moving on. I think this bullet point here, this achieved global mobility early in the career, I don't think you need to point that out as a separate line, because it's pretty obvious. If you spend 2 seconds looking at the resume, you're like, oh, London, Poland, Mumbai. So first of all, that's something that I think is kind of obvious. It's also something that comes across really easily in the career narrative, right? In my last 9 years at this company, I've worked across 4 different nations, or 3 different nations and 20 different clients, or something like that. So that's kind of, I would much rather use this bullet as, say, like some sort of a sub bullet here for really elaborating, right? If the digital transformation is like the big thing you want to draw attention to, then a thing you could do is like really try to add more details by putting in some sort of a sub bullet, which would be sort of like a sub project, right? Like led initial brainstorming across 15-person team. I think that's a better use of your space here.
Okay.
And then here, doubled client success rate, like with new innovations. I would love to have a little bit more concreteness. Like, what does it mean to double a success rate? Maybe be a little bit more, a little bit clear with the definition. If you led external trainings, leading trainings is great because it shows people skills, but I think you could probably, maybe we could be to market and predict the sales better. Something like that. I don't want it to take up 2 lines. And if you could also tell me like how many people you were training, was it 2 or was it 20 or 200? That would be great. So similarly, going on for this facilitated sales strategy, I'm assuming you mean for external clients and not for your internal company. So I would like a little bit more, facilitated sales strategy. And like facilitated, is there any way you can talk more like improved sales by 10%? I know you might not have access to those numbers if you're an external consultant, but anything like that I think would be great. And then I was like, this is actually the second strongest bullet, at least upon my first reading of the resume, because again, it was so clear. You partner with consumer good companies, you help them with the innovation. I was like, oh, it's so clear what this means. So just try to aim for that level of clarity with the other things. You don't have to put your GMAT on your business school resume unless the school asks for it, and few of them do. And you also don't need to put your nationality, because both the GMAT and the nationality will be clear from other parts of the application. One thing I wanted to know, you do have 9 years of experience, which means you will be entering next year with 10 years of experience. Do you mind reminding me, which schools are you targeting roughly?
So I'm mainly looking at European schools. So London Business School, INSEAD, Oxford, and yes, so those are the main ones I'm targeting. Yeah.
Perfect, because the European programs do tend to be a little bit more open to more seasoned candidates. So I think that's a really strong choice for you, especially if you want to continue living in the UK. I'm not, and I know with Brexit, there's all these weird new work visa regulation things happening. But I would urge you to look at all of the the big ones in the UK, especially since some of them, like London is a 2-year program, but Cambridge and Oxford are both 1-year programs, which, if you are a little bit on the older side, you might not want to spend 2 whole years in business school. So that's something else to consider. So I think I'm glad to hear that you are targeting the right sorts of schools. And I think INSEAD will really like the global aspect of this. So I think that's great. And then my only other comment down here, which you won't be surprised to hear, is, if you can just tell me how many people you helped with your charity.
Okay.
So much the better, right? Because again, some people are like 2 different people could write this exact same line on their resume, but one person helped 3 people and another person helped 300. And as a reader, I don't know which one are you. So that's why it's helpful to sort of try to quantify everything wherever possible. I think I'm ready to move on from this. Are there any other? I'm also looking at the clock. Do you have any questions or comments before we move on to resume 2?
No, I think I have a fair bit of idea. So thanks a lot for your time.
All right, excellent, cool. So with that out of the way, I'll go ahead. I'll save this and I'll send it to you later if you want it. Sharing a window, stop sharing. Okay, resume 2. All right, I'm now pulling up resume 2. Resume 2, can you see it? Is it pulling up yet? Am I doing this right?
I think it's loading. It's still black, but I guess it's coming.
Okay, good. I'll just give it a second then so that way I don't take off talking and no one can see what I'm pointing to.
Sorry, Maria, I think there was a comment, someone asking you to zoom in a little. So maybe you can do that for the next one.
Yes,
I
of course.
missed that as well. So maybe you can do it for the next one.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, hopefully the text is not readable, but hopefully by talking through some of these points, I think the points that I'm making are still pretty valuable in terms of just make sure that what is that role that you're doing? What is that impact? Far more importantly, by how much did you help the client increase their revenue? How many people were you leading? Those sorts of details for whatever job you have is going to be super, super valuable. So, but thank you for that feedback. I will try to keep that in mind for these next ones. Okay, is it showing up yet?
I can't see it yet. Can any of the guys see it?
I'll do? You know what? I'm going to stop sharing and then start resharing again and see if that helps. See if maybe that's what we're doing wrong.
Makes sense.
Okay. It should be sharing now.
Okay, yeah, there it is.
Yay! All right, so Mr. Resume 2. Okay, so this was sort of a reading this resume for me was a bit of a roller coaster of emotions because you have some amazing experiences, but it's also some of these jobs you've only had for 6 months or 4 months. And so I was having a hard time figuring out the very top here, we'll sort of zoom in again to try to be, in case that helps. So zoom, you have been an independent consultant for roughly 4 years now. But during that time, since 3 of 2016, you have also had several other jobs. So have these jobs underneath here, have they been part of your consulting work? Or are they are you sometimes a part-time consultant, sometimes a full-time consultant? I think that might be a good thing to address at the very beginning. So that way, as a reader, I'm not wait, I'm confused what's going on.
Got it. That makes sense. Yeah. So that the second option, I've been sometimes a part-time consultant and sometimes a full-time consultant. I've been working mostly as a full-time, right after my role in Unicorn or there. Mm-hmm. And also in between some stuff. For example, obviously between the Unicorn and the FinTech Co. I've been full-time, and then right after the FinTech Co, I've been doing full-time consultant as well. Mm-hmm. Mostly as an independent, but I've also kind of worked with some particular agencies or firms at some points, in some specific projects.
Agencies and firms, you mean outsourcing agencies or?
Yeah, marketing agencies. Okay. They hire me for a particular project for some client, and I hop into that. And I've also had my own clients as an independent.
Okay, so I think that one of the things maybe we should do is to avoid that sort of moment of wait, he's been doing this for 4 years, but then he had this other job here, but then to sort of avoid that, I think we should address that up front at the summary. So we can get rid of, first of all, this here when I put things in gray, that's my way of saying I think it can be deleted. So this line here about I'm an enthusiastic collaborator, like pretty much anyone applying to a top MBA program is an enthusiastic collaborator who goes the extra mile. So I don't think that you're getting a lot of return on investment for this space. But so e-commerce and marketing. So I think it could be, maybe here we put like a dash, often as a consultant, but sometimes, maybe so. This might not be the best wording, right? As a full-time staff member, maybe something like that. Again, I don't think I'm coming up with this wording off the top of my head, so it might not be great, but maybe something right up here. So right off the bat, it's clear that you sort of bounce back and forth between being you're independent on your own or working directly for companies. My other question is, for some of these times when you've been at, say, FinCo or the Unicorn, have these been like defined, like they hired you and they said, look, we want you to come in for X number of months and do this one thing for us and then leave? Or?
No, it wasn't. So for example, the Unicorn, I was there for actually somewhere, I gotta get that checked, but I was there for around 7 to 8 months. Yeah, I need to get that fixed.
Yeah, it says 4 months right now.
Yeah, no, it was it was actually 7 months. The thing is, they took my role to another country. They asked me to come, but I wasn't at a moment in my life when I was willing to go. I mean, maybe at several other moments in my life, I would have been really excited to go. But at that precise moment, I wasn't, due to personal reasons.
Understood. Okay, so that can be explained away. I'm wondering if, for this one, I don't think that I wouldn't necessarily bring that up in the resume, but I do think in the essay, perhaps in the optional essay, a lot of schools offer you this opportunity to have sort of like is there anything you think we might be confused about? And I think this is something they will be confused about. So I would definitely go through and sort of say, the Unicorn wanted me to move. I wasn't in a right place for that at the time. And then so similarly though, so fintech, I just see a lot of tenures that are less than 1 year. And I do think that will raise a question for them, fairly or unfairly, of, is this someone who is difficult to work with? Is this someone, like, when you leave the company, is it because they're asking you to leave? Or is it because you're sort of one of these impatient types who's like, you're all idiots and I'm quitting? So to the extent that has not been the case, if it has been the case, pretend that it hasn't been and don't bring that up. But if that's not the case, I do think it's worth it, most probably in the optional essay, to say things like, this was always, the fintech was always meant to be a one-time project. I left when I was finished. And then Unicorn wanted me to move to some other country, wasn't cool with it. So, so that I do think that that's sort of a red flag.
Yeah, that makes sense. I agree, actually. That's one of the things that I know that I have to address somehow, so that it is not it doesn't give the wrong impact or wrong image. But yeah, I am definitely aware of that. For the other one, it was sort of an experiment in the way it actually was a 6-month contract. It got a little bit longer because we need to have some stuff done for the FinTech Co. But yeah, that was mostly it, really.
Perfect. So for this one, if it was, always meant to be a short-term contract, then I would put that directly here, right after your title.
Got it. That makes sense.
A short-term contract. And then again, I would mostly address these changes through the optional essay. Also, who are your recommenders going to be? Previous bosses or?
Yeah, for FinTechCo, it's kind of a previous person that I reported to. He was the head of growth. I can report it to 2 different people in a way, to the CEO and to the head of growth. The CEO, he's got a lot of things in his mind, so I don't want to bother him with that. And for the other one, let me know if it makes sense, but it's for the retail co, one of the person that I work the most time with. We've kept in touch. He's doing pretty well right now. He's moved. He's from another country as well, so it might make sense. Or should I kind of be looking for people that are more recent in my, like, it's like one from the beginning of my career almost, and one from very recent?
So, well, let me ask you another question. I'm going to answer your question with a question. What is like the rough career goal, MBA reason story that you're planning to use?
There are a couple of different things. So for one of the things, I want to actually move to Canada. I want to do my MBA over there. So the schools that I am planning to apply for are some of the top Canadian business schools. And there are a couple of different things. So at the beginning, I am looking to work at it can be a startup or an e-commerce firm. And eventually, I would like to start up my own business. I have a few ideas that I've been kind of working on. But that's the plan at the moment.
Okay. So given that both the entrepreneurial aspect and the e-commerce aspect might come across more strongly from one of your more recent clients, I think it might be better to do a more recent client, and so much the better if it was one of these short-term companies, because that way the recommender can vouch for it and say, like, we were so sad when he wouldn't move with us to Argentina or Colombia or wherever it was, right? I was so sad when he was only with us for a short time, but in that time he made a lot of impact. You know what I mean? It just helps build that credibility in terms of, first of all, your skills in an entrepreneurial environment versus being in a larger environment. It helps, again, build the credibility that, when you left, it's not like you're someone who gets fired. Like every single job you join, 6 months later, you get fired. And also I think, excuse me, the skills that you are developing more recently, pardon me, are the ones that are far more relevant to the long-term goal. So if you were like, oh, I want to become, at Retail Co., you were doing social media marketing. So if you were like, oh, I want to start my own social media firm, then that person from that job would be able to say, oh, he's so great at social media. But since you are, you want to be in one of these, more early stage environments, I think ideally you would get one of your other, either e-commerce co or unicorn. And if that's not possible, then perhaps another client for whom you have made a significant impact, preferably one with which you've also had a longer term ongoing relationship with, if possible.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense. Actually, the Retail Co. is also e-commerce. It's interesting because it's like backed by a pretty big like venture firm, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get your point. So I'm gonna give a look at that.
Yeah, it's also kind of ancient history.
Yeah.
4 years ago is kind of a long time, especially in startup years, right?
Yeah.
People say that startups, it's like dog years, right? 1 year working at a startup feels like 7 years in real life. One minor thing here for the Retail Co., I would just stack these titles like this, because it was it was a little weird to have like the title by itself down here and then nothing beneath it. And I get it, right? I actually advocate stacking titles when you have like a slightly more senior version and a slightly more junior version, but they were basically the same job. I think it's fine to just sort of stack them one on top of each other. So I thought this one, I'm just sort of moving from bottom to top, relaunch and manage the online stores of MBA and NFL. I love that because those are sort of big names, increasing sales. So your impact is early on in the bullet point, which also grabs my attention. Just one minor thing, like you have like all these things and you've got this like little orphan word down here where, if you'll notice, you're taking up a whole line of space just to have that one word there. And I'd rather have you save. I'm a huge fan of saving as much space as possible, so that way we can either add in super exciting details or at least improve the spacing between the bullets. So I don't know exactly what it would be. Maybe we do a little slash here. No, that's still not enough. Anyway, maybe we can figure out some way to get rid of like one word, so then that way you don't sacrifice an entire line for that one word. So this one for onboarding Burger King and 3 other major restaurant chains, this was one where for Unicorn, where the bullet started off, I don't want to say in a boring way, but you're like, well, I sort of defined this customer acquisition strategy, and it wasn't clear to me, like, well, were you actually leading the customer acquisition strategy, or was this more of like you were by yourself coming up with a PowerPoint on your own, and then someone else executed the customer acquisition strategy?
Kind of both. I'm pretty much at Unicorn, I did most things. I did have a couple of reports that helped me with some stuff, but mostly I was in charge of definition, implementation, testing, reporting, and all that stuff, like the usual startup kind of role.
Totally get it. So what I would do is, instead of saying like, well, I led the definition of some strategy, which is kind of like, it sounds like it might be a book report, sort of like an academic exercise, I would start this bullet point with convinced Burger King and 3 other major restaurants to something like, and this might be too much, but like to take a chance on our platform by leading a team of X people to execute a growth strategy, a customer acquisition and demand generation strategy that I created. Right? So now I want you to start, and this applies to every person listening right here, I want you to start as much as possible with like, what's the most impressive part of the bullet point? And for me, it would be convincing a large company to take a chance on some sort of a product from a startup. Also, whenever you've led a team of anyone, let me know how many people that is. And then you end it with, well, because I created the strategy. So that way you're grabbing the reader's attention as soon as possible. And the same comment applies to these 2 bullet points up here, right? When I put it in yellow, that's my signal to move it around somewhere. So I would much rather have it say, increased user base and monthly revenue by 20% by establishing partnerships with 3 other countries. And similar to this one, like increased conversion rates by 13% and decreased churn. I don't think you have to tell them what churn, I think they understand what churn is, so we can get rid of that. By leading, X people in these 3 different teams to do it. See what I'm saying? So that at least as much as you can, you're grabbing that attention early on. And then finally, this is not going to be a surprise at all, given what I've been saying for the past half hour, but you created this online marketing course, you've done this training. Is there any way, like how many people signed up for the marketing course? Or this is hard to do with training, right? But in terms of like, did you ask for customer satisfaction at the end of the training course? Or did you, I did to 200 people, I lectured to 200 people on digital media and 30 of them said that it helped their careers. Or it's hard to do, I get it. But insofar as if you can say like created a self-paced online digital marketing course, 300 people have signed up for it. Anything like that helps me, just because like I said before, like someone else has written the same exact bullet point, but one person created the self-paced course and the only person who signed up for it was their mom and like their roommate, and someone else created an online course and 300 people have taken it. And so I don't know where are you in that spectrum? So wherever you can define anything like that, I would love to know.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense. I'll get into that. Some of the data, I don't have the information, but I can definitely ask around for part of it.
Okay.
And it makes a lot of sense.
Great. So I think those were all of my sort of high-level comments. Before I move on to resume number 3, do you have any questions or?
No, I think it looks good. Thanks for the insights. It does make a lot of sense. It's very helpful.
All right. Excellent. Cool. So I will also save this. I'm going to, again, stop sharing and then start sharing again, because I feel like that, I don't know, I felt like that was sort of the thing that was working before. Okay. Resume 3, I am pulling it up right now.
Yeah, I can see it.
All right. Excellent. Okay. So resume 3, you are the typical engineer It looks like you've got both a bachelor's and a master's in mechanical engineering, and you seem to be a very, very good engineer. And so one of the challenges you're going to have in your resume is trying to convey as much as possible your strengths in interpersonal engagement, as opposed to your strengths in designing a flux capacitor, whatever it is that you're designing at these aerospace companies. So I'm going to start with some pretty simple feedback, and then we can dig more into the more complicated stuff up above. So just as a very minor point, resumes are meant to be reverse chronological order. So you are going to want to put the master's degree above the undergraduate degree.
Okay.
And then the other thing was, I was getting confused here with the timelines as well. Like, you got the master's in 2018, and then I started thinking that you actually started your career in 2018. So I put this in red because I'm like, oh no, he only has 2 years of experience. This is not optimal. But you have more years of experience. Was this a part-time?
Yeah, I was taking evening classes at the state school near my place of employment.
Right. And that's very common, especially if your employer was in somehow either helping you pay for that, or they were allowing you to take some time off to leave work early to get that master's degree. Okay, so I would, right off the bat, just to try to prevent these moments of like, wait, what? So he got his degree in 2018. He started working in 2018, but no, he didn't, because here, I'll zoom in. Sorry, I forgot. So the master's was in 2018, and then you had this. According to the way how this is laid out in reverse chronological order, it makes it look like this job from June of 2018 was your first job that you've ever had. Yeah,
I understand how you. Yeah.
And so my first, I was like, oh no, only 2 years of experience. Yikes. Oh, cringe. But you have more experience than that. So I think in terms of, it's going to be interesting, right? Because presumably while you were in school, you were working, you were still working full-time and going to school part-time?
Yeah. So the initial employment started in 2015. The start of the year, so in January, and then that fall, I started taking classes.
Okay. So I wonder how we can organize this a little bit. There's two things I can think of. We either move all of these positions under large defense contractor truly in reverse chronological. So it would be almost like senior test engineer. Oh God, but then seniors, you would almost have to sandwich in the research and development rotational.
Yeah, I could put the research and development rotation under the master's, because in reality that was my thesis or final project, and it was since it was a sponsored master's, I worked on a project for the company.
Perfect. I was just going to say, or what we could do is we could move it under. So first of all, and I also want to put the word sponsored here next to the master's. So that way it's, again, right off the bat, I know you were doing it part-time. I know your company was paying for it. Companies don't tend to pay for education for slackers. So that's a good sign that your company likes you. So what I would do then is, I'm not sure that one of the issues I had with this was that it wasn't clear to me, and after listening to me now for almost 40 minutes, some of the impacts of this weren't clear. So on top of normal work duties, I examined a new product, but I'm examining a pen right now, but I don't, what does it mean to examine?
Yeah, I can put the name of the product. I just took it out for the sake of the anonymity of the company.
Sure. But even with the name of it is not as important to me as you examined it, and as a result, you convinced your company to purchase a startup that was making these pens, or what came of that examination, or
Yeah. So I guess I tried to say in the last bullet. Unfortunately, the final conclusion was it wasn't cost effective to do the analysis.
And was this a product that your company was planning on somehow investing in or pursuing?
Yeah, it was different from the traditional design approach, and there were some new things in that field they want to look into.
Okay. Do you have any idea, like maybe what you could, do you have any idea how much they were planning on potentially spending on this new product if your research would have said we should move forward with it? Because what I'm getting at is, could you say something like saved company $3 million by proving that a new technology wouldn't work?
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I'll have to look at the report in a little more detail. It's been a while, but I don't know if I have a hard number, but I can try and get something.
Even if you don't have a hard number, maybe phrasing it more like saved company co, millions of dollars and 3 years worth of development time by proving that this new thing was a bad idea. Because the name of the thing doesn't matter for me, because I'm not hiring you as an admissions reader. I'm not hiring you to come to my school and become the mechanical engineer on campus, right? I'm hiring you to become a future business leader. So any sort of impact that you've had on the organization, saved company co, let's say 6 months, or let's say 2 years of development time by persuading, or let's make a pick, by convincing them to not do X. Maybe something more like that.
Okay.
And then here you collaborated with engineers to analyze the new product that you just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm wondering like how much, I guess we can leave this in. I was wondering like how much new information does this bullet give me? Because presumably if you were studying a new product, is it obvious that you would be working with other people to study it? Or is that not necessarily obvious and therefore the bullet is worth it?
Yeah. That's a good question. It's probably obvious if we need more space for keeping things clear.
Oh, here it was. So here it was. Oh, I see. So all 4 of these were on the same thing. Okay. So So you recommended not pursuing the project at this time. I want to focus on, I don't want the bullet to start with I drafted a report, because again, like drafting reports is kind of like, ugh, do your paperwork, Scully, or whatever. Was it that Monsters Inc., that woman who's like, Wazowski, your paperwork. So I prefer to not focus on that. But what I really like is this idea of, I was working for this big company, they were going to do this thing, it was a bad idea, and I convinced them not to do it. So that's sort of framing it more around that. Yeah, so I put here like, what happened? Like I analyzed the costs of the new product, and I was like, so what happened as a result? But that's because I didn't understand that this was all related to the same project. So another thing that you could do here to make it clearer is we could try to make these sub-bullets of the main one. So that way it's clear. That these are sort of the children, so to speak, of this project. So you don't have the questions that I had, was like, what are all these things?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so minor point here, this GPA here for your undergrad, you had 3.29. I think it's fine to let's round that up to 3.3. And then Division 1 in track and field, were you varsity like all 4 years or a couple of years?
Yeah, all 4 years.
So I would say, I would make it clear. Obviously, the fact that you said Division 1, I think, implies that it was varsity. And then here put like whatever those years were, 2010 to 2014, or I might not be doing that math right. But just again, okay, perfect. Whew. I've only had 1 cup of coffee this morning, so so just to convey, because varsity athletics is such a huge time commitment, and getting a mechanical engineering degree is such a hard thing. So it immediately helps contextualize that 3.3 if I know that you were also training X number of hours per day. So I really wanted to emphasize the varsity athletic things. I'm starting at the bottom so that way we can sort of save the rest of the time at the top. Just out of curiosity, you said that you're the member of a church. Have you done any sort of bake sales or volunteering or Sunday school lessons or Anything?
A little, like once a month, the church volunteers at a soup kitchen, and I go
Perfect.
80% of the time, maybe. It's not every single month, but I do go to that. So add a sub bullet to that, maybe.
Right. So at least there's a little bit more substance to this. What would it be? I don't know. Well, let's just say in soup kitchen volunteering.
Yeah.
So that way there's a little more substance there than just I'm the member. As an undergraduate alumni network contributor, what did that mean? This sounds like it has potential.
So my name's on the roster that undergraduate people can look up if they search like engineering jobs on the alumni website.
Okay.
And I'll have my email and some description, and they probably once or twice a year I get people call and ask things about career path.
All right. Well, you know what? Let's leave that as is. I wasn't sure if this meant that you were like, if you were like really actively involved in your alumni group, and so you were helping lead happy hours in the pre-COVID world, or something like that. If it's only like 1 or 2 kids a year, I don't want to. Yeah. I think it's fine to keep that as is. Okay. So now that we've got the thesis underneath the school, we've now got large defense contractor. So you were a senior test engineer, and then you were 3 different versions of senior systems engineer. Okay. So I was wondering, so right off the bat, we've got, again, I'm trying to remind myself to zoom in. You led cross-functional teams. So right off the bat, of X or of between X and Y people.
Okay.
Right? Are we talking 2 people? Are we talking 7 or 20? So you successfully met deadlines because it was in the past. And then the second bullet point says, I communicated effectively with these different groups to design the product. So is product the same from bullet 1 to bullet 2?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think this could be another case where it almost seemed to me like this bullet point was saying almost exactly the same as the bullet point above it. Like leading a cross-functional team versus communicating effectively is kind of the same thing. So what I would say is across, let's do this. Let's kind of combine these between X and Y across engineering disciplines, suppliers, customers, whatever, development of product. And then here, this could be successfully met deadlines and cost requirements. And then the part about being acceptable to all parties, I would love to phrase this one a little bit more strongly, like, convinced, convinced, exactly. Convinced union to accept something or other, which kept project on track. So anything that you did to and if you did multiple of these things, that's great. I would much rather see signs of you saying, look, I talked to the suppliers and I got them to lower their prices on the widgets, or I got the customer to agree to give us an extra 6 months, or anything like that. That matters so much more to me in terms of proving that interpersonal skill than I sent the customer some email, right? Or I presented, So similarly, for the in-person moving on, you presented your designs and calculations to the customer via formal written letters and in-person presentation. At that point, was there any element of you, telling the customer to back off, or the customer was like, we want it to do 4 million things. And you're like, well, you've only given us the budget for 1 million things. So you need to pick what it is. Was there any element like that? Or was it just status report and nothing dramatic happened?
There would be some back and forth, but it was usually technical in nature, less schedule or budgetary.
Okay. But even then with the technical, were there technical disagreements between the customer and you guys?
Yeah, sometimes there would be, yeah. Okay.
So I would rather have something like, let's get rid of the formal written letters. This isn't the Jane Austen.
Yeah, okay.
So I would say led presentations to customer and managed maybe intercompany technical disagreements.
Okay.
Okay. And then in terms of mentoring people, just tell me how many.
Yeah, I can get a number for that.
Okay.
4 or 5.
Okay, perfect. So then moving up to senior test engineer. This is another one where like, it's so interesting, right? Because if the test engineer does a bad job, then the rocket ship explodes and it's really, really bad. But it's one of those jobs where like, if you do your job well, it's completely unsexy. But if you do your job wrong, it's disastrous. So I want to like try to make this a little bit more sexy by saying something like, instead of supervising testing procedures for electrical systems during new construction, like can you put like some sort of a, ensured that, let's just make up a number, X $billion new project, something about the extent, like, was it safe, like wouldn't blow up,
Yeah,
was as safe as possible,
safe and controlled manner or something like that.
Yeah, by ensuring, I need another word, let's get rid of testing procedures, by managing safety for mechanical and electrical systems.
Yeah, that sounds nice.
Makes it a little more interesting. To complete tasting in safe and efficient manner. Yeah, this might be good as a bullet point if you're wanting to convey, as a sub-bullet, I mean, if you're trying to convey, look at all these different people I talked to. And then also, since you already basically implied up here that the testing did in fact work, you can probably get rid of.
Yeah.
Oops. Beep, beep. Okay. Right, so then that way you save a line there. And then moving on, we're almost done. Time is going well. Yes, I tend to go over on these things, so I'm glad that I'm sticking to the time. It's rare. Poor Abhijit will attest to that. Okay, so your current role, collaborating with different teams to design a space product. Are you, I'm guessing that this is a role where like are you kind of like the central hub in like a wheel with different spokes? Are you the main center person trying to do this collaboration? Or is it kind of like is there some other project manager?
Yeah, there's a different overall project manager. And then it's just a lot of technical engineers. And since it's a smaller sort of design team, it's a lot more working together and integrated versus formal department.
Okay. I'm just trying to think of like, well, first of all, presumably this is present tense, collaborating with interdisciplinary team of X, team of X in manufacturing and science teams. I think I just accidentally cut out a word, to design a space product. So, maybe you're not in charge of a specific budget, but to design, is there anything like super innovative or groundbreaking or novel about it?
Yeah, I think so. It's part of the whole Gateway project that's going to the moon. Okay.
Groundbreaking, new, something cool project that will be part of NASA's, I'm making this up, NASA's first moon mission in 30 years, right? Something like that. So even if like your job itself, you're like,
yeah, that makes it sound a lot better.
Yeah, right? Like, look, girl, I really am just sitting around designing flux capacitors. Like, at least this way, it's like, ooh, how can we describe this as sexily as possible? And then similarly, my last comment here, so perform an analysis of a space of this product structure to meet all mission requirements. Again, can we say something like, ensure, maybe a different version of the word ensured, but like ensuring that product will have structural integrity and not explode, right? Ensuring some other word besides ensured.
Yeah, that's good. I didn't want to throw out any engineering terms, so I just left it at analysis, but I can.
Yeah. But I think if you were to say like the plutonium rod of the flux capacitor, I think that might be a little too technical, but something like the structural integrity, I think is sort of plain English enough.
Yeah.
Of components to ensure, astronaut safety or something. That spells astronaut, right? So that it's a little more.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I can word that appropriately.
Yeah. Okay. So those are all of that's pretty much everything I've got for you, and you're the third and last person. So before I let you go, were there any other questions that you had or things you'd want me to address?
No, that was really helpful. Thank you.
Excellent. So given that, I will now close this, stop sharing. All right. So we've got 3 whole minutes left, which for me is a record because like I said before, I tend to go way over to poor Abhijit. I stress him out every time. All right. So now we've got time for a couple more questions. First of all, I wanted to say thank you to my 3 volunteers. Very brave of you to be on the internet having me dissect your resumes, but I hope this was useful for you guys. Before I jump into the questions, anyone else watching this, if you like my advice, please check out applicantlab.com. I have all the same advice. It's just in video format, and it costs a lot less than traditional admissions consultants. So with that out of the way, we will jump to Sunny Z. Question, what are the rules for grounding GPA? Yes, I think, look, if you can round that number up, make it instead of a 3.66 out of a 4.00, why not put 3.7 out of 4.0? There's no rule about it. So, in the application form, they might tell you like, this is how we want it to be. But for the purposes of the resume is the first document that is normally read. So for making that first impression, definitely round up is okay. Moving on to Derek. Should I devote a section to a leadership role that I had 3 years ago or keep it to one bullet point? If not, where is it best to highlight the leadership experience in the application process? Okay, so Derek, in your resume, it depends what you mean by, if you mean a leadership role at work, then what I would do is I would combine both of your suggestions and I would try to describe it as quickly as possible. But again, if you focus the beginning on that bottom line impact, like I helped the company save X million dollars by leading a team of 7 to do whatever, that simultaneously conveys leadership and impact, but it saves you from having to spend a ton of time. So I would do that. Now, if you mean like some sort of extracurricular leadership, I would keep that underneath, sort of in an other or community section. And where the best place to highlight leadership beyond the resume is in the essays. Many essay questions will give you opportunities to discuss not only what was the leadership experience, but also, especially for, schools like Harvard or Stanford, for you to really describe like what were those interpersonal challenges that you faced along the way and how did you overcome them? So don't worry, you will have plenty of space to do it. Just be efficient with your wording and focus on that impact as much as you can. Any other questions? Oh, where would you involve? Okay, Sunny Z again. Where would you add previous on-campus involvement like clubs in the resume? I would put it under education. I know that some people say to put it under community or involvement or like extracurriculars. My problem with it is that when I'm reading, I like to sort of get a sense of the whole picture in time. And so if you were going to college and doing well in classes and also leading a club, for me, I prefer to sort of see all of that visually in one place. So that way I'm like, wow, she had a lot on her plate and she was doing well in class. Awesome. As opposed to, okay, she did well in classes. And then several lines further down, oh, she was also leading a club. So there's a lot in this process that is subjective. You will get different advice from different consultants, but I like to put it together so that way I see the whole picture of what was happening in your life at that time. Any other questions? Are we done? Oh, recency. So, hi, Shovik. Shouldn't you be at work, Shovik? I'm just kidding. Recency versus gravitas. What if your past work experience was significantly more impactful than your current role project? How do you go about highlighting that in the top half of your resume? So I would devote a little bit more space. I have this thing that I call the real estate rule, which is they're going to devote as much attention as much space as you give to it. So if you give a lot more space to that current job that might not be as exciting, they're going to zoom in on that more because they're going to see that more space is devoted to it. So in that case, what I would do is I would put more bullets. Maybe that last job, I put 4 bullets on it. And on the current one, I have fewer bullets, less space devoted to it. I make sure that I phrase things in a way that makes it clear that things are a work in progress, like currently assembling a team to do stuff. So that way it's not like, oh, who's this loser who hasn't accomplished anything? But in fact, like, no, I'm just in the beginning phases of it. And also, if your previous job was way sexier than your current job, then get one of your recommendations from that previous job. So then that way they will vouch for your impact. All right, that's it. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Thanks again to my 3 brave folks. I will for what it's worth, I will send the commented things to you guys. I guess Abhijit can do that for you. And everyone else, thanks for joining me. I hope this was helpful for everyone. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Thanks. Bye.